Hi, let's talk about project management and automation of project management specifically. Now, in this topic, I'll have a look at the activities of project management, essentially piece by piece, and see what kind of automation can help in these activities. So, we'll start with the whole idea of the purpose of project management. And the purpose is to plan, coordinate, manage the project. The responsibilities of a project manager are also to foresee the risks. I mean, if it all worked according to plan, it'd be easy. But the difficult part about being a project manager is that it doesn't all work according to plan. That's what they pay you for, to anticipate these things that you know from your experience are going to come out of left field, that you can't anticipate. So these are the things that you need to deal with. And the question is, well, how does automation help us with that? The definition of a project manager, or the purpose of project management has been given in one place as the process by which projects are brought to a successful conclusion. Now, the definition of success varies depending who you're talking to, but largely it is that the project meets its intended goals, right? And that's a reasonably broad definition of project management, the purpose of project management. So let's have a look at, for a start, the project scope. Now, the first part about planning a project or project management is to figure out what it is you actually got to plan, and that is the scope of the job. Generally, an organisation will allocate to you some resources, and these resources are the budget, the time, the infrastructure, and the people, other resources. Now, you could argue that people and infrastructure are resources, but I prefer to keep them separate because people get a bit grumpy when you equate them to a desk. But you can see that most projects break down to that. You have the scope of the project that has to be achieved. You have the goals, the quality goals, and the functional goals, and organization's strategic goals that the project's intended to achieve. And you've been given some resources, that is time, money, people, infrastructure, with which to achieve those. Now your job is to try and plan out, is that possible and how is it possible? So you can start with the whole idea that the tools will help to impose some kind of a systematic method. I happen to have been around when project management tools were first started to be used in various software projects. And prior to that, it really was a case of just muddle through. You'd give somebody a particular job to do, and they would say, it'll take 6 months or 2 years or whatever. And they might, some of the better ones would draw up a list of tasks on a piece of paper, and they'd guess how big that was. And that was sufficient at the time. But before too long, say by the late 1980s, the project management tools had become to be available on PCs quite cheaply. And now they're very sophisticated and very readily available. So now it's pretty much professional misconduct to fail to use these project management tools. Now these tools do impose a certain amount of rigor in the planning and enable you to get it more right than otherwise you would. But they won't guarantee success. Now, the reason for this is that, in my experience, project manager, or almost any IT professional after a few years of working, is very good at estimating how long it will take them to do the things that they can think of. And that's great. Now, the problem is they just don't think of everything, and it's all these things that they don't think of that trip them up. Now, there will always be things that we don't think of, simply because we are unable to predict the future with certainty. we go into these projects not knowing quite how it's all going to unfold. We don't quite know how the technology is going to work. We don't quite know how it's all going to fit together. And as we get through to the project, we uncover all these things where we have to make adjustments, and it doesn't quite flow as smoothly as we thought we would. Okay, that's your job. You're the project manager. You are expected to anticipate these things and to take care of them. Automation helps us planning with the different approaches to it. Some of the common project management tools like Microsoft Project or Primavera tend to take a work breakdown structure approach. Now, this is a classic manufacturing paradigm of you take the work, you break it down to how are you going to distribute the work, or how it's all going to be done. Later, the assumption is that you put it all back together again, and that's great. I mean, there's some evidence coming out that in fact we're pretty good at breaking it down, decomposing the problem, but we're not that crash hard at reintegrating it again. So possibly we might change the focus of project planning to the integration side of things instead of the decomposition. But nevertheless, these tools are very good about breaking down a large project into manageable chunks of work. Now, an alternative approach that's come up in recent times, particularly with the Agile approach and with particularly with Scrum, is the ticket-based systems, where all of the requirements of the features, it's called the feature stories. The particular pieces of work are simply given a ticket. And there's very little distinction between a ticket for new work and a ticket to fix old work. It's all tickets. And all of these tickets are just simply put in a largish bucket, and you take the collection of the most urgent ones at the time, and that becomes a release, and you just go ahead and do them. Now, the ticketing system is a very simple project management tool. It doesn't have the sophistication of the work breakdown structure tools, but it does allow a great deal more flexibility because you're not committed to a particular schedule of things. Nevertheless, it is a variety of automation that is becoming quite popular and works quite well. Now, we also have estimation tools. Estimation is one of those things that is seldom done well, and there are reasons for this. One I mentioned was that we fail to think of everything. We know how big the part is. We've understood what it is to be done, but invariably we don't quite think, oh yeah, that's right, I had to convert the data, or I had to go and open the file, or I had to create a directory structure, this kind of thing that we just don't anticipate. So some kind of automation can help us to remind us of all of these things. Now, some of the more formal tools that came available were stretched right back at the early 1980s. One of the most famous one was Kokomo. That was the cost model. I've forgotten what the first Co stands for, but it was the cost model, and it was based very much on statistics coming out of a large number of large defense projects in the US. Now, it's still a very good approach for large projects. There have been attempts recently to calibrate it for much more agile approaches, but a lot of people do find that it's probably a little bit over the top. But nevertheless, in a big project, you really ought to pay attention to that. That one comes out of Barry Beam, and you can find it quite easily. A competing model comes from Capers-Jones, who's also got a lot of statistics for them. A technology, not quite a tool so much, but a technology, is function point counting or function point estimation, which tries to enforce a certain amount of discipline about determining the size of whatever it is you're building. That won't give you the time, but you can convert the size to the time depending on various other factors that go on. They all work. Any disciplined approach will work as long as it is disciplined and consistently applied. Now, once you've got the project planned, estimated, and you've launched it, then you have to monitor the project to see, is it going the way you expect? Are there things coming out that you didn't expect? Are there unanticipated problems? This whole problem of monitoring a project can become quite large. And there, tools can help enormously because, among other things, they keep track of it all, they keep all the data in place, they keep a fairly unbiased view of it all, they enforce a certain amount of rigor about the measurements and entering the data, and they come out with an answer that is pretty hard to dispute. So monitoring tools are extremely good in that way. Now, most of the project planning tools, the Microsoft projects in Primavera and those kind of things, tend to give a fairly standard look at things, and they will tell you how far you are through compared to what you expected to be, and that's great. The ones from the ticket-based systems tend to give you a burn-down chart where you expect your progress to be a certain amount, and you can see how much work you've done in the time, and you can see the work being completed in time, and you get your estimations from there. So those kind of monitoring tools work quite well and very, very helpful. Now, communication tools are also becoming quite important as we're finding that the communication within a software development project tends to have to be everywhere to everywhere. In past years, and particularly with waterfall projects, the communication tended to be quite hierarchical. It came from, say, the project manager or the technical lead down to the team, and some of it filtered back up. But as the projects have become much more volatile and the technologies have become more volatile, it's become more important to enable all of the team to talk to all of the other team, because there has to be this kind of awareness of what's going on and the mutual adjustment about what's going on. Now, to some degree, the daily stand-up meeting is something that achieves that. It lets everybody know what the status of things are, and it enables people to help out or to know what the problems are. But part of it is to create the awareness within the team of everything that's going on. Now, that's great when everybody's in the same room, but when they're not in the same room, now you need more help with your communication. Now, almost any of the tools will work, and I've seen projects run essentially on Facebook pages, just radiate information, and that's a pretty good thing. There are various collaboration tools available. Some I can think of are Basecamp and Huddle. I think Google's probably in there with a good chance as well. But all of these tools have got the habit and the benefit of having all this communication within the team, and that seems to be quite necessary. So in summary, we have tools that help to plan, we have tools to help to estimate, we have tools that help us monitor, we have tools that help us communicate, and these have made quite a bit of difference to project management and to managing of the projects. Okay.